Well, good morning, everybody. It's really great to be with my community where I share faith and peace and really the source that allows me to keep fighting the good fight every single day. So it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I want to thank Victoria for inviting me and Peggy for being a long-time friend. Thank you so much, and thank you for the beautiful prayer. It's incredible. I have a lot of acknowledgments for this parish, but I think you want to hear about public safety, so I'm going to cut those short. But I do want to acknowledge the person that introduced me to this group where I've spoken before, and that is Catherine Mowbray Lawrence, and I know you all have her in your prayers. I think about her every single day, and I know she is fighting the good fight. She honored me by being one of the people that spoke about me when I became the elected district attorney, and you know, you can't beat that English accent, so it made me sound really important, so it was just wonderful. So before I start my nitty-gritty and give you some data and information, it's a loaded agenda. I promise that I'm going to leave 20 minutes at the end for questions, so that's a lot of time to get out something that I didn't cover, that you have a question about. I sometimes do an interactive. If you have a burning question, I let you ask it, but there's a lot of you today, so I want to make sure I get through everything. Note your questions as I speak, and then you'll have time to ask me at the end. I do have to leave right at 10 because unfortunately they don't give me breathing room in my schedule, so I go from one crisis or one event to another. So let me set the stage. The district attorney's office, you know, they still haven't built podiums my size, even though I'm the top law enforcement official in the county, but it's still that way, and I haven't grown despite all my prayers, but all my other prayers have been answered, so thank you to my God. So the DA's office, just to kind of set a perspective for you to understand some of the data that I'm going to share with you, some of the information I'm going to share with you. The DA's office is your people's prosecutor for the entire county. It's one of the few positions that covers all 18 cities and all 39 unincorporated areas in San Diego County, to include Rancho Santa Fe and the North region. We are larger, our county, than 21 states. You know, I serve 3.3 million people that I take as a personal mandate to do everything I can to keep them safe. That is a large, tall order, and I accomplished this by setting clear policies and communication with my 12 police agencies and sheriff's department. And we're in constant communication, unlike many regions that have lost the ability to actually pick up the phone when there's a crisis and discuss it and figure out what we can do. It's very different here in San Diego, and I'm blessed to have grown up in this law enforcement community for 34 years. That's longer than I've been alive not doing this job, just for anyone who's trying to figure out my age, as women like to do. But, and so we've kind of grown up together, and they've become police chiefs and sheriffs, so the relationship is very easy, and I can just, you know, talk to them about what I feel are gaps, what's happening, the needs, and we have a lot of mutual respect. This is really unusual. I recently was voted the National District Attorney President for the National Association, so I get to be the face and the voice for all prosecutors across the United States. And by talking to all of my fellow prosecutors across the nation, I know that this isn't common. And I think it is one of the secret ingredients as to why San Diego, even though where we're positioned, we should not be one of the safest urban counties in America. You know, the highest murder rate in the world is in Tijuana, and that's right there next to us. But we have one of the lowest murder rate in the United States. For me, I don't feel comfortable with that because one is one too many for me, but it still is a testament to that level of fight and collaboration. And unfortunately, as you know, many areas elected a DA that is really an imposter. You know, they're not really, they're a political figure. They're not actually the people's prosecutor, elected by special interests and other things. And thankfully, we haven't let that happen in San Diego County. So I do this through 7 offices that we have across the region. We have a DA's office next to every courthouse. So one for the North region, for example, that would be the Vista Courthouse. For the South region, it would be in Chula Vista, that covers all of South. For East County, it's in El Cajon, but covers all of East. And in Central, it's in downtown San Diego. A juvenile branch, and then a crime prevention office, and then a victim protection office, which is One Safe Place, the North County Family Justice Center, that I'll mention to you later. So this is how it's 1,000 employees that I'm blessed to have. 330 of them are prosecutors, and then we have our own really high-level police force of 120 police officers that honestly I steal the best of the best from the 12 police agencies, and they kind of let me because we have an important job to do. Their cases can't be prosecuted, and we can't bring a conclusion and a justice at the end without having those police officers that are at the top of their game, that are protecting our victims and witnesses so they can come to court, they can be safe, they're investigating lots of the higher level cases, and they're doing so much incredible work. And of course you see 2 of them here today that are, as you can imagine, being the DA, you make a lot of enemies, but I don't worry about it because they're here and they take care of business, so that's really great. So our region has many challenges, but the data still remains that we are one of the safest urban counties. That's good news, and I'm going to give you some information in that regard. But it's just almost impossible to let it continue this way if we don't have a change in our laws. Many days I feel like the girl at the dam, you know, plugging the hole so the water doesn't gush at us, but some days it feels like it's not possible to keep up that level of vigilance when the laws don't support us. So for example, one of the things that happened is we fought, and as many of you know, it was a priority for me to fight human trafficking. It's actually the very reason that I became a district attorney many years ago. It started at 12 years old. It was my dream to protect girls and women from abuse and human trafficking. And I just stayed with that dream of forming a specialized human trafficking unit, sex crimes unit that was compared to the Law and Order Special Victims show, if any of you are fans, as the real life version of Law and Order Special Victims Unit, which is an incredible thing, like a dream fulfilled. But Sacramento, unfortunately, voted and the governor signed a law a couple of years ago that made it legal or decriminalized loitering for prostitution, which means that officers, in their way to protect victims, are able to approach, ask questions, figure out why the person is half-dressed on the street, why are they getting into cars with strangers, kind of to protect our community. they're really unable to do that in the same manner at all because the law decriminalized loitering for prostitution. You know, officers don't observe actual prostitution taking place, which is the #1 field for sex trafficking. Prostitution is the #1 exploitation, money-making for greedy traffickers. That's the #1 thing they thrive on. But officers can't see that in plain view because it usually happens in a hotel room, in different places that they're not inside of. So what they're looking for are the visible signs to stop it before it happens and to bring services to victims, to extract them from the clutches of their traffickers. And that law, which was SB 356, took that away. Now, they made up some stuff like they do in Sacramento about how police officers are just harassing people on the street. Like, with the little resources they have time to harass people rather than look for actual criminal activity and protect our community. Once that happened, even before the ink was dry, we saw our hard-fought efforts on human trafficking begin to suffer, essentially. We had brought San Diego with the specialized unit I formed, the Human Trafficking Task Force that's 24/7 fighting the good fight, all of the things we've done to fight international and domestic sex trafficking. We do reverse engineering so we can see the messages that traffickers send. And their messages were, now your quota of how much money you have to bring home has gone up because police can't even talk to you or stop you. So the abuse to our victims became even more tremendous. In order to test this theory and still recover and rescue victims, we created Operation Better Pathways. And this operation was 200 police officers, because remember, they can't actually intervene based on what they see. So we had to draw 200 law enforcement officers away from all of their regular duties, in addition to the ones embedded in the task force, including my prosecutors, investigators, and we had to actually survey by watching and recording and doing all those activities for 2 weeks. There's no way to maintain that sort of resource, but we did it. And in 2 weeks' time, we recovered 16 victims off the street. 8 of them were children. And the youngest one of the children was 13 years old. There was a pregnant 22-year-old on the street with her 17-year-old sister, and she was terrified when she was recovered. She said, I went on the street and I didn't fight it because I didn't want my 17-year-old to have to be raped, essentially, more by me not doing my share for the trafficker. It's absolutely a stunning event and really just morally repulsive because our laws are meant to protect the most vulnerable. And when we can't in America rely on the power of the rule of law, we've really lost our way in protecting the most vulnerable. So this, I'm not giving up on this. Every time I get a chance, I blast the law, I talk about it, so that communities empowered to reverse that bad law. The 13-year-old we recovered had been brainwashed. Her parents had drug issues, they weren't there for her. She ended up with her grandmother. Her grandmother was doing the best she can, but she couldn't control all the messages she was getting from these evil traffickers posing as a boyfriend, as a loving figure who's gonna send her out to California, and she's gonna have a glamour job because she's so beautiful. She's gonna be modeling, she's gonna be doing all these amazing things, and she bought it. I mean, it's a brain of a 13-year-old with a frontal lobe not fully developed. She comes out here to San Diego, and within a few days, she's out on the street. At 2 a.m., we capture her on the cameras. And the cars are rolling by to pick her up. We were able to intervene. We recover her, but at the time when we recover her, she doesn't want to go with us. She's been brainwashed to think that we're the enemy and the trafficker is really the person who is taking good care of her. So this is a phenomena that I call psychological kidnap, because our community, you all, are looking for signs of human trafficking because you want to help. But you're not going to see what you're expecting. You're not going to see chains. You're not going to see visible bruises. You're not going to see somebody running to you necessarily for help. It is the subtle signs. It's the person dressed differently than the adult male that's with them. They're not dressed for the weather conditions. They don't have a suitcase in a hotel, but rather they have a plastic bag for their belongings. They're looking down, they're not answering any questions, they're not making eye contact, and I assure you, if you ask them what day it is, they won't know, because every day is the same. It's about being exploited. So we have our own methodology to detect who they are that the community needs to learn about. But we sent her back, we provided her trauma services initially to her grandmother, and a few months ago we received, my investigator who's in the task force received a message in the middle of the night, and it was this young girl texting that she's not able to sleep, the nightmares are coming. She wants to join a group where she is with her grandmother, but she now understands that what happened to her was wrong, and that she was stripped of her innocence and of her childhood. So we're working to put the pieces together. It will take years, it's a journey to put those pieces together. But this is like a live example of what we have to deal with in law enforcement, with our job that we're doing well, that we're devoted to, getting harder. With regard to so most of the girls that were recovered, by the way, a good 90% were American girls. They were not international. But where we see the international kids is more in labor trafficking and a crossover between labor and sex. And the unaccompanied minors, I mean, it's just the way it is. You can, Google the most liberal articles that were written. The Department of Justice just issued a study on child labor in the United States and how it has exploded. And how did it explode? It exploded because these kids are coming and allegedly they're going to go to a family member, a sponsor, but there's absolutely no system by which someone can check on that and verify that that happened. It's too overwhelming of a task. And they don't have it digitized or computerized as far as I know. This is a federal link that I have no authority over whatsoever. But I like to study what I can, to understand it, to be on the lookout for it, to give our human trafficking task force training so that we can uncover it when we can. But we know that they are in factories, they're putting little cereal boxes together, they're working with heavy machinery in major American companies that are hiring subcontractors that then hire these children, so they're not in school, they're not doing what they were promised, what the government said, oh, you can come in, you have a proper asylum, and you're going to be cared for. That is not what's happening. It's a ripe environment for greedy exploiters. I'm co-chair of the National Association of Women Judges, and we're putting on a panel because we want to educate the judges about this new phenomenon. And we're actually having the very researcher on this issue, Dr. Dank, who was funded to provide this research, and the results are really, really pretty awful. It's an awful statement about the children. And then when you see the signs of labor trafficking, you know that there's also sexual abuse and other things happening. We know even in our foster care system that is one of the #1 target kids for traffickers, is kids that come from the foster care system. That's why places like San Pasquale are so essential, so our kids can be protected, can be safe, because the world out there is looking for vulnerability. That's what these criminal organizations exploit. Another big issue that our region has faced is the fentanyl crisis, right? So that we're talking, just to clarify, about illicit fentanyl, not the fentanyl that's medically graded, that is measured by doctors, by anesthesiologists, that is in exact amounts so that it doesn't kill people. This is the illicit fentanyl that is made in essentially buckets by 2 major cartels in Mexico. They get the precursors, the elements to make it, from China and from India, and they then take buckets essentially, and we have pictures of it from flyovers, and they mix it up, and 2.2 milligrams can kill you, this illicit fentanyl. But a lot of people ask, why would they want to kill their clients, their supply, their money? It's not that they want to kill their clients, it's that the profit margin is still very high. For every person that they kill, they've just produced so many more entirely, absolutely addicted people because of the high toxicity. It's 50 times stronger than heroin. So heroin was the be-all, end-all for addiction. You have now something 50 times stronger, and for every person they've killed, which by the way in the United States in 2023 was 77,000 people, compare that to 9/11 and the people who died that we just marked their anniversary and should never forget them. These terrorist organizations are doing so much damage to our community. 77,000 lives lost. The highest killer of anything else, car accidents, guns, cancer, diabetes, no other cause comes even close to the damage that is done by illicit fentanyl. 77,000 souls. So in San Diego, I met with the National Czar, and I was not invited again because I told him essentially that it's completely not enough what they're doing. How do you take something that is this national emergency that has killed more 18 to 45-year-olds in our nation than anything else, and not treat it like the emergency that it is, hitting it from law enforcement, prosecution, but more is being done. But for San Diego, we kind of took matters into our own hands, and we formed a task force and another task force and a homicide team 10, because there's only so much that we can depend on outside of our own region. And we just went to work and we started fighting this fight, and this year finally our fight is starting to come to fruition. And here are the numbers. For San Diego County, the overdose deaths from fentanyl have gone down by 8%. That's about 78 lives less than before, even though the seizures and the number of fentanyl coming in is still the same. And even probably a more comforting statistic, and especially for the San Diego Alliance that works so hard alongside us on this, is that for kids under the age of 18, for San Diego County, that number went from 12 kids in 1 year losing their life to 2 kids in 2023. That's again one too many, but when I think about whether something is successful, I rely on the data to show me that. And I use overdose deaths as the ultimate harm that can happen to someone. There's so much other harm that happens because of these dangerous drugs, people with brain damage. There's a lot more evidence now coming out that even when people survive the overdose, there is some brain damage because of the oxygen deprivation that already takes place that then later sets in and actually makes them more susceptible to use again and to potentially the next time not have Narcan or something next to them to save them. So we're also hitting it on the education end. On the prosecution end, we've doubled down. We're part of the DEA's homicide at Team 10. We've prosecuted 8 cases for homicide for dealers who knew exactly what they were selling and they still sold it. We prosecuted 503 fentanyl dealers last year. And finally, like I said, we saw the numbers go from 152 overdose deaths in 2019 in San Diego alone, jumping to 452 the next year, and then in 2022 that number was 814, an incredible amount, but then now this year going down to 749. And again, with the kids, it's still just astronomical when you think about that number, but there are signs that our efforts are working. But if you don't know this, you should, as leaders in your communities. The funding for drug prevention went away in 2009. The state said that drug prevention is not effective. So what we have now is an absolute disaster. I take not so effective over disaster. So there's organizations that took up arms, say San Diego Alliance, the North County Alliance, our own office, in order to educate the community. But we need, as parents, grandparents, community leaders, to demand really that the schools prioritize effective, evidence-based drug education in our schools. Because our kids are then going to college. They need this information. Even if they escape the harm in high school, if you're watching them like a hawk, we need to arm them with the education. And we do believe, because we went and did our own education, is why we're seeing these better results in San Diego County along with prosecution. I want to shift just slightly to domestic violence. As you know, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October. And in this area, we have led the nation. Domestic violence has not stopped or ceased around the nation. It is horrific for families. It's the number one cause why women end up homeless is domestic abuse that then drives them to the street. They're surf couching initially, but then they feel like they can't do it anymore. They end up on the streets with their children. It's one of the number one causes. So it's something that I'm really focused on and have been for the last 7 years since I became DA. Remember, I told you about measurements. We took our fatality review and we measured the ultimate harm of domestic violence. Those would be domestic violence murders. An example of domestic violence related, I know you all know the Cathedral Catholic high school teacher that was beloved, that was murdered because of jealousy and stalking behavior. It's just horrific. And fortunately that ended in a very successful prosecution that will put him away for life without the possibility of parole. But the key to, and then you saw probably recently the TikTok star that killed his wife and the guy that was with her. Domestic violence is still with us, but the measurement is that we measured 7 years before we started all our efforts, and the last 7 years, Domestic violence murders in San Diego County have gone down by 32%, from 99 to 67. But strangulation, domestic violence murders, and I'm going to tell you why that's important, have gone down by 75%. The reason we focused on strangulation as a way to stop the escalation of violence in a domestic abuse situation is that Dr. Campbell, one of the leading researchers in domestic violence, told us that when they looked at every factor across the United States as to how an abuser will become a killer, strangulation, meaning putting hands around a throat, was the #1 sign that the next time it's not going to go well. There could be a death. Something about that power and control of doing that motion of hands around the throat was a telltale key sign. So we tell women, run, don't walk if that happens. You have to get out, and you have to get help to get out. And that message is resonating. At one safe place in the North County Family Justice Center, we have embedded the Palomar Health domestic violence nurses, sexual assault nurses and doctors, forensic child advocacy center are all in one place. That was a dream for me to build it, and it opened 2 years ago. But the key to that was, how do we actually then prevent that cycle of abuse from going on? In the past, our options were this: leave him. But that might mean you're going to be homeless, you don't have the economic support, you can't put food on the table, he might try to take away your kids. That is not a good option to give people. We needed to give them more than just prosecution. And that's why we built the North County Family Justice Center, in order to bring safety and other things to protect women. Have any of you visited the North County Family Justice Center? Great. I'd suggest you all tour it and visit it. You can arrange for a tour. There, it is a thing of beauty. It's considered the best of all family justice centers in the world. There's about 300 of them. State of the art. When you walk in, you'll see more recycled timber and beauty than you've ever seen. Green growing out of the walls. I wanted the best for our victims and survivors, and to show them, maybe for the first time in their life, that there is dignity and that our community cares about them. I want to shift now a little bit to the power of laws. As DA, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. You have to study it for yourself, so I'll put that flag there. You study it, you read it for yourself. But Proposition 36 is going to be on the November ballot. It'll be the last proposition on the November ballot, and it'll be titled the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. And what it does is it balances and takes away the negative impacts that we've had from fentanyl abuse and from the rampant theft that started to occur after Proposition 47 passed 10 years ago. It doesn't take away Proposition 47. Proposition 47, to set the stage really quickly, made theft under 950 a misdemeanor. And it made possession of hard drugs, heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, a misdemeanor. And that would not be, in my mind, negative if it stopped and created a different system for habitual and repeat offenders. But what it did is it didn't put any stop to the misdemeanor. So you get a citation or a turnaround, a book and release. If you go in 100 times, 54 times, like the guy we have, and steal just under $950, some of them even bring calculators. They know exactly what they're stealing. It's always going to be a misdemeanor. So it did not differentiate accountability, which makes no sense and did not deter or incentivize somebody to change their behavior, because every time it remains a misdemeanor. No distinguishing between first-time offenders and 100-time offender. The same for possession of hard drugs. If you YouTube, you'll see videos of police officers offering some of the folks in the encampments with open drug use. Of course, some of them are there because of poverty, because of trauma. They need our compassion, but there is no question that our homeless population also has a substantial portion that's simply highly addicted and doesn't want to change that behavior. And there's no incentive to change that behavior because there's no consequence. For example, we have drug courts. These are life-saving courts where the court gives the individual two choices. You get treatment and your conviction is wiped away, or you go to jail or prison. We don't have that anymore. So the drug courts are only half full. There's no incentive for people to get their life together. And when you're addicted, you need that incentive. So what Proposition 36 will do, it took 900,000 signatures. It's been a monumental effort. But what it will do is that on the first time you get your misdemeanor for theft, the second time you get your misdemeanor, the third time you get those two doors. You can address the underlying causes and get your misdemeanor again. Or you can go to jail. It's a wobbler. The fourth time, it stays a felony. So it's an escalating path. Not a mandatory state prison or a 3 strikes law felony, but still some consequence. For hard drug use, first time misdemeanor, second time misdemeanor, third time a treatment mandated felony. That means that you get those two doors. You're either going to do your treatment and then your conviction is wiped away, or you will go to jail. The fourth time, it's a felony, but again, you can still do your treatment and get probation, but you won't get it wiped away. So it's an escalating, we know that that's deterrence and how it works. On fentanyl, it holds drug dealers accountable. If they sell something and someone dies, then they are held responsible for that death. They get an additional enhancement of 2 to 5 years, depending what the injury was that they caused. So I want you to study it, decide for yourself, but I see ads already up on TV that it's mass incarceration and all of this, which is, you just have to read it to know that that's just false. So take a look at it. Good, I have 8 more minutes to give you your 20 minutes, which is fantastic. So I want to talk quickly about homelessness and a solution that our office has created that is coming on board very, very soon. Actually, it's already on board. It's being beta tested in the North County at the Oceanside Transition Center. During COVID, we discovered that through a text app where we were secretly texting with our victims to see if they're okay, that the violence had really been escalating, but they didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go. We figured out that it took about 10 days to house them, to find them shelter. We just thought this was unacceptable. Someone could die in 10 days. So we contacted the largest nonprofit technology company, one that's not like a money-making technology company in the nation, that had worked on massive solutions for food and insecurity and other things. And we said, could you come to San Diego and work with us on expediting this time where we can house our victims in a quicker time? They came out, and within a couple of months working with all of us, they created an app solution, the Safe Shelter for our victims, where we were able to, in 8 minutes, we brought down the time from 10 days to 8 minutes, find a suitable, adequate shelter at an 80% match. So then we could focus on that 20% and not use our resources and have that weight. Some of them we had to take outside of county, depending if they had gang violence, threats, or other things. So I waited and waited. 28 billion have been spent on homelessness, but nothing to show for it. We don't have less homeless in California. We don't have, the numbers aren't going down. So, I mean, I think action, the way you measure action is whether it's actually working, you know, and I don't know, that was my math class, like you add 1 plus 1 equals 2, I don't know, seemed pretty simple, and no one could show me that. And I think many people are working hard and are really well intentioned, but they're looking from their own vantage point, but they're not looking at the big picture of what can be done. So I use some of my asset forfeiture money because I know from talking to communities, this is a big issue for many communities. And it's not humane to leave people on the street. You know, that's like killing them with kindness. That's my view. Because if they have mental health issues, they can't really get treatment on the street. If they're addicted, they're not going to be able to be treated on the street. The coroner told me, and this really motivated me and provided a justification for me to use this money, that homeless folks are dying of overdoses at 118 times higher rate than someone who's not homeless here in San Diego. So that makes it like there's actually no issue that there's a substantial portion that is facing a severe addiction problem that's keeping them on the street, or one that sent them to the street. Either they became addicted after because of desperation, or they were on the street because of the addiction. What came first, the chicken or the egg? It's kind of irrelevant. We have a problem that we have to solve. So we've been working on this. I found the money. You'll be happy to hear it didn't come from taxpayers, it came from seizures from drug dealers. So I was very happy, it's called asset forfeiture. So I didn't ask for a tax hike or anything, just, you know, we had lots of money. And the app then was produced now to deal with all of a regional solution for homelessness. So that a police officer, a social worker, a shelter, Father Joe's, whatever would be trained. It's very simple to use the app. And when you interact with somebody who's homeless, you can offer them in real time whether there is an available shelter. And you don't have, we heard so often that they have to wait days, and by then the person is not interested or is back in a cycle of addiction. Like I said, so maybe the best way to explain it is picture hotels.com. When you go and book your vacation, you don't call each hotel. You go on something and you look for available hotels that match your needs. You know, you have children, you've got a pet with you, you have a disability, you need an ADA shower, and you put those in and up pops your options. That's the same thing. And even another side benefit is whoever we cannot house, that information will go into a data lake that will inform all cities what is missing in the inventory. So right now we just guess that we don't have enough shelter, and that may be the case, but we don't know that for sure. When I visit shelters, I see open spaces. And I don't know what that means because we don't have the data. And now we would have the data for it. So I'm very excited about this innovation that's coming next year. And the last 2 points I just want to tee up is elder scams. They're still on the rise, and the #1 elder scam is still the tech support scam. That's a pop-up that comes on your computer that says that your computer has a virus or has been hacked or compromised, if you call this number, they will help you fix it. And then when you get there, you give them control over your computer, that little mouse. Then they go in, they find out where you bank or other things. Then you'll get a call from a bank that you'll believe because you were just told you were hacked, and they'll tell you that your accounts aren't safe and you have to withdraw the money in order to keep your money safe. San Diego County, again, we measured in 2023, $98 million were lost to seniors from scams. This is only for the reported cases. We know it's underreported. So very, very key and important to talk to everybody you know that happens. Control, Alt, Delete, you don't respond. And then you can, if you're worried about it, take it to a professional, your Apple Store, your Best Buy, somebody that you know in tech support, but do not respond to those. That's almost 80% of our scams. We see other scams, grandma scam, grandpa scam, and remember with AI, they can actually now mimic the voice of your grandson or grandchild. So what is the solution? Each family needs to have a secret code that they only know, that we can verify that the caller is your family member. Because it may be that they've taken snippets from Snapchat or whatever and made up a message for you, which they can do now in minutes. And the last point is, you're hearing a lot about school shootings and school threats, and I want to make sure you understand that in San Diego County, we have the gold standard protocol for school threats. I tried the last school shooting case, the anniversary was yesterday, and actually I was in touch with some of the mothers of the kids that were shot at yesterday, because we always talk on October 8th. It was the Kelly Elementary School shooting in Carlsbad, and after that we created a protocol with all 42 school districts that's very strict. In fact, I was in DC talking about this very thing because we're one of the few places that has this protocol that I helped create to make sure that our kids are safe. Is anything foolproof? No, but every single threat is followed to its conclusion so that we can respond before it turns into an actual school shooting. You can ask more about that, but I have to stop and honor my question time. So this is like drinking out of a water hose, I know. There's a lot of information, but you're now up to speed on public safety. Question?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for all your efforts in protecting our citizens and children especially. And I'm a volunteer friend at San Pasqual Academy with a home for foster kids, and it's been a very successful program for 24 years. And as you know, the state tried to close it, and it's now reopened in the last 3 years, but the county is dragging their feet, getting more kids placed, repairing the buildings. I mean, it was a thriving, successful program that took care of 135 kids. Plus, we're not only that, once they graduate, we're putting them through colleges and supporting them. And it's been very frustrating to see this successful program underutilized. So what else can we do to get that vulnerable population of foster kids who deeply need us? I talked to the head of Health and Human Services, and she has a nice, polite answer, but she's been giving this answer for over 2 years now, and many of us are very, very frustrated.
Well, you know, what you all did to save it in the first place was the power of the community, and I was proud to stand with you. And
Yes,
I think that you keep it up, you know, and now that I didn't know that this was happening, that there is new challenges, so I'll keep it on my radar and see how I can help, but your voice is very important. It might not seem like it, but it is. People reverse course based on your voice. It's very important.
Yes, I think they were shocked that these foster kids had the support of thousands, and some of you are in this room.
Of course.
And they were shocked because we had the courtroom with Judge Dahlquist, and he walked out saying, "What's going on?"
Exactly.
You know, these kids don't have parents. What are all these amazing, wonderful adults doing there to advocate for them? So thank you so much for all your efforts as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll keep up the fight on that. It's on my radar now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
I know many of us are here because we hear on the news that there's more than 350,000 children missing. So many of those children, they all have parents somewhere in Mexico, and we want to understand it more completely. Are the parents sending them alone? Because it's saying that, like, many times the traffickers are bringing them across, and we saw on the news one of the Border Patrol tried to intercept because when they stopped this group, he threw the toddler on the ground, and the parent wouldn't do that. And he was powerless to really stop it because the paperwork. So many parents in Mexico must know that they don't know where their child is. Why isn't there more outcry? Why isn't there more of the ID and the DNA and checking the phone numbers? They say that they write phone numbers on the child's arm, and Catholic Charities will come and help take them somewhere. What can we learn more about this and what we can do to stop it?
Can I?
So could you summarize the question?
Oh, the question is.
We can't hear that.
Just addressing the 350,000 children that have come across the border and are missing. And
Yeah,
try
so
to
that's-
understand that they all have parents, and where are these children going, and what can we do more with identifying who they belong to, instead of there's not enough resources to do that.
Well, I mean, so this is a federal government issue, and again, your voices need to be heard.
What can we do? Tell us what we should do to more.
Well, you should write letters that are organized and ask what system there is. It should be transparent. I can tell you every system that's in my office. It should be transparent. What is the system that's being used to verify that the person that's coming with the child is their actual guardian or parent? How are you tracking these children in the United States? You can Google the articles, New York Times, the new research.
It's like who to write to, who to address.
What's the Department of, Homeland Security?
Yeah.
It's also
But they know this already, and yeah.
I
But
know.
if we get enough letters going, well,
I think it will help. I think you have to keep addressing, also address it with Congressman Isa, your federal counterparts. I know he held a session here to talk about immigration policy. I would use your current congressmen and senators because they are your conduit to these agencies. They can hold meetings and ask them questions and interrogate what policies they have in place. That is your best course. That's just like you. If you wrote me, I would answer you. What's our balances? What's our checks? You need to write to your delegation from here, San Diego, to the U.S. Congress.
the second question would be, is the Narcan as current protocol still?
I can't hear the questions in the
I'm
background.
gonna ask you about
She's
fentanyl,
asking about the Narcan.
Narcan, use that as a protocol to save life. Now that the cartels are mixing fentanyl with xylazine, a tranquilizer, is it still saving lives?
It's still
Narcan.
saving lives, but it's now taking 2-3 containers sometimes
That's what I
because
didn't
it's
know.
even stronger
Three,
because
yeah.
it doesn't work on xylazine.
Okay.
It only works on the fentanyl, the opioid. That's the only
Yes.
thing it works on.
Yes.
But it's still helpful
So
because
it's still saving their lives?
It's
Okay,
still
but
saving
we need
lives.
more to carry on us.
I would carry more. I would carry a couple. So after you administer, wait, 30 seconds, a minute. If you don't see anything, administer again in the other nostril.
And where?
And let me go to other questions. Yes?
Homelessness, real loud.
Homelessness, it seems, especially homelessness or unhoused, when people are addicted to drugs, it just seems like, I live in Solana Beach, and many of our city people are afraid to do things because they say that homeless people, it's not a crime to be unhoused. I I get that. But when there's drugs involved and there's kids around, I am like so vigilant for our kids because I lost my niece to fentanyl overdose just a little over a year ago. And just last week, I'm at our community park. It's already dark. We just had a wonderful sheriff's event. And I'm passing by the museum, which I oversee. And I see these two young kids, one's like 10, the other one's 11, talking to a homeless couple that parks themselves there in our museum. And I know that the lady got busted for drugs. And she was let out right away. And it's like, what's going on here? Why are these adults? It's dark or the parents. And like, no one does anything. It just seems like they're just letting them be because, well, it's not a crime to be in the house. But she just got busted for drugs and she was let out right away. So it's frustrating for us that we care about our kids. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. And I know that we can't be watching these people all the time, but why? It just seems like people are afraid to do anything because they're unhoused and it's not a crime.
Yeah, so Lisa, first, like I said, I mean, my heart goes out to your niece, I think only 23 years old.
Yes,
It's just
23.
incredible. But that is the Prop 47 negative consequence, is that she's gonna be released even if she's seen with these drugs 10 times. There's no incentive to get her out of this situation. There's no teeth to the law whatsoever. There's no increased consequences. But remember that whatever you do in good faith that doesn't involve physical violence is going to be protected under the law. You can call police, you can, if people stopped calling police sometimes because the law was not allowing them to act. If Prop 36 passes, then when you call police, there's an incentive for police to go out because on the second, third time, there's increased avenues to actually do something. You're absolutely right that we are confusing compassion sometimes. Compassion doesn't mean you let people die of overdoses on the street, live whichever way they want. And the US Supreme Court supported that recently. In the Grants Pass case that said that you can't ask somebody to move unless you give them a suitable shelter, but they didn't define, the Ninth Circuit, what is a suitable shelter, what is adequate. So it caused a lot of confusion for officers. Well, the US Supreme Court reversed that recently. We wrote, my office, an amicus curiae to the Supreme Court, citing the statistic that folks who are homeless, again, I'm not saying everybody, are the cause for 50% of our arsons. And that should not be. You can't have a small population be causing 50% of the fires in our county and say that's okay because they get to live whichever way they want inside an encampment, set fires, set drugs on fire, set food on fire, whatever it is, it's not acceptable. So the US Supreme Court just came down with that. So what we need is a balance of common sense and compassion. They deserve our compassion, but there also needs to be compassion for the community. Everybody has the right to be safe. They need to be safe. They're our brothers and sisters. But we need to be safe. The people who are housed need to be safe as well. It's a balance. Yes.